Let's talk about symbols of Spain. I recently started using a new logo for this podcast, Spain to Go. Since I started making episodes back in the summer of 2020, a lot has changed. One of the biggest things is that I stopped drinking. So every time in the last 2 years that I made a new episode, I'd be kind of annoyed by the wine glass logo. The logo was made by Morena's brother, actually, and it might have been Sangria. I think I gave him a list of things he could use and suggested Spanish flag colors, yellow and red, hence the red wine or sangria and the slice of lemon. Anyway, the new logo, also made by Morena's brother, is a pig. Not a great symbol of Spanishness, but the Chorizo Chronicles, the name of my blog, has a pork theme, and there certainly are a lot of pig-based products out here in Spain. Some historians, in fact, suggest that the national obsession with pork comes all the way from the religious fervor of the Middle Ages, after Spain expelled the Muslims and the Jews in 1492. Publicly consuming large amounts of pork was a sign of being a good Christian. Much like companies today changing their logo to a rainbow during Pride Month, eating some ham or hanging a string of sausages in your kitchen told everyone around that you were keeping up with the current thing. In any case, a pig might be fine for my podcast, but it's not a great national symbol. So I thought, what are some other symbols of Spain? Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. Today we're talking about symbols of Spain. There are plenty, so we've got some history to talk about today. This is episode 96 of the podcast. Thank you very much for listening. After we're done, you can head over to my YouTube if you would like. I've got a new video about my recent experience out in Extremadura, the bike tour in Extremadura. I've got the video about day 2 of that up finally. My YouTube channel is called Learn Spanish with Daniel. It's also got all the episodes of this podcast and, as the title suggests, some videos that will help you to learn Spanish. But if you check out the recent videos over there, you've got the Extremadura Bike Tour Day 2 video. I'll have more of those soon as well. Thanks to biketourinSpain.com for setting that up for me. You could also donate to this podcast. Head over to expatmadrid.com/donate and you can send me a donation from €3 to whatever amount you want. Anything helps. The podcast is free, the blog is free, the YouTube channel is free. I don't really have anything to sell you, but you can make a donation. Let me know also if there's anything you would like to hear on a future episode. I'm happy to hear from you. So, symbols of Spain. The first symbol of Spain, of course, is the flag, and the flag is controversial. Officially, there are 3 symbols of Spain: the Spanish flag, the coat of arms, and the national anthem. And in many countries, these things would probably be uncontroversial. Not in Spain, though. Here in Barcelona, in fact, you'll barely see the Spanish flag at all. The Catalan flag is hanging in a lot of places. Some people fly independence flags. That's called the Estelada, and it's inspired by the flags from Cuba and Puerto Rico, who declared independence from Spain in the late 19th century. I believe the Catalan independence movement was inspired in a way by the idea of declaring independence from Spain in the late 19th century. I'm not a big scholar of Catalan history, but I think that's why they inspired their independence flag, La Estelada, on the Puerto Rican and Cuban flags. Anyway, the Spanish flag is 3 stripes, red, gold, and red, with the coat of arms left of center. You can find it on Google and not have to listen to my long description of it. In any case, it is controversial, but why? Well, some associate it with Franco's dictatorship, although the red and yellow stripes have been around since 1785. The Second Republic from 1931 to 1939 used a different flag with a purple bar at the bottom. You'll sometimes see that one flown at protests. A lot of the Spanish left likes the idea of a republic more than the monarchy. Long story. Here in Barcelona and the rest of Catalonia, the independence types would rather not have symbols of Spain around at all. I would guess the Basque country doesn't have a ton of Spanish flags either. Town halls in some parts of Catalonia have signs next to the door, for example, proclaiming that they're only flying the Spanish flag out of legal obligation, not because they want to. And apparently, most town halls don't even follow the law. They should have a Spanish flag, but they don't. You can see the flag on national police stations and some other government buildings, but it's not common around Catalonia. In other parts of Spain, the flag is less controversial, and the different comunidades autónomas also have their own flags, as do provinces, cities, and town. You'll see those when you travel around. Variations on the Spanish flag may include a black eagle, that's the flag that was used during the dictatorship, or the silhouette of a bull. More on that later. That brings us to the national anthem, which, get this, has no words. The Spanish national anthem, officially called La Marcha Real, is one of the world's oldest. According to Wikipedia, it was first mentioned in an army document in 1761, and since at least 1770 has been used at events to announce the presence of the king. Throughout the years, there have been commonly used lyrics, but none were made official. The only lyrics I know are actually the satirical ones. Everybody in Spain knows these. Franco, Franco, tiene el culo blanco porque su mujer lo lava con Ariel. I'm sure my neighbors think I've lost my mind down here. Anyway, I don't know if your average Spanish person is aware of the old lyrics or not. Nostalgic right-wingers would probably break out the more specifically fascist song Cara al Sol if they were singing at a get-together. But back to the Marcha Real, because in 2008 there was actually a contest to create lyrics for the anthem. I remember seeing some guy singing the winning words on the TV news. The contest was held by the Olympic Committee because back in the day, Madrid was hoping to host some Olympics or other. Also, because it's a running joke that in international competitions, the Spanish athletes can't sing along with their own national anthem. They have to stand there silently while it plays, or they could hum it. Bum, 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 etc. You can, of course, find the Marcha Real on YouTube if you would like. You could look for Spanish national anthem also. If you haven't heard it, it's just a normal national anthem type song. So the contest back in 2008 was won by some guy down in Ciudad Real and announced on the news. But the whole thing was immediately scrapped, among other things because the lyrics were in Spanish, rather than representing the linguistic diversity of modern Spain. South Africa, it was pointed out, has an anthem sung in 5 languages. After that, we had the whole Great Recession, and the wordlessness of the national anthem moved to the political back burner as millions of people lost their jobs and the real estate market crashed. That's a story I told way back in episode 22. So, what about the coat of arms? The third official symbol of Spain is the coat of arms, which appears, among other places, left of center on the current Spanish flag. Americans like myself don't usually know much about coats of arms or heraldry in general. It turns out there's a lot to know. The Spanish coat of arms has changed many times through the years. The one with the black eagle I mentioned earlier was suppressed in 1981, but several of its elements remain in the current coat of arms. The black eagle, by the way, although associated with Franco by many people today, actually comes from as far back as the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella in the late 15th century. Spain has got a long history. Anyway, the current escudo has the crown on top representing the monarchy. The shield in the center of the whole thing has sections representing 5 ancient kingdoms: Castilla, León, Navarra, Aragon, and Granada. To the left and right of the shield are two pillars, representing the Pillars of Hercules, down in the Strait of Gibraltar, and a ribbon emblazoned with the slogan Plus Ultra, meaning further beyond, which incidentally is the national motto. And I know that if I don't mention this bit, someone is going to write me an email about it. The two Pillars of Hercules, with the ribbon draped between them, are possibly the origin of the dollar sign we use in the US. The US dollar was originally based on a Spanish coin in circulation at the time of our independence, and the two bars with the ribbon between them kind of looks like the S-shaped dollar sign. The origin of the symbol is debatable, but some theories point to this bit of the Spanish coat of arms. Let's talk about the Spanish monarchy. You remember a few weeks ago or a few months ago I talked about social class. I started that article by talking about royalty and the nobility. In fact, a lot of Spanish people are less than thrilled with the monarchy, but according to surveys, they also don't think that getting rid of the king and creating a republic is particularly urgent. At least most people don't. In any case, the Spanish monarchy isn't nearly as symbolic as the British one. Queen Elizabeth II was practically synonymous with the UK, at least in my mind. Over here in Spain, King Felipe VI is not quite as symbolic. I also doubt he's particularly well known abroad. Would your average European or American even recognize him if they saw him in the street? I bet they wouldn't. There aren't many monarchies left in Europe, and I certainly wouldn't recognize the King of Sweden, for example. But the king is officially the head of state, so he must be some sort of symbol of Spain. He also has his own coat of arms, which is similar to the national one, but instead of the Pillars of Hercules, he has the collar of the Order of the Golden Fleece wrapped around the shield. I remember going to Teatro Español in Madrid years ago and wondering why the curtain in front of the stage had a coat of arms with what looks like a dead sheep hanging from the bottom of it. Now I know, it's because of the Order of the Golden Fleece, which is, dare I say it, a long story. Furthermore, Felipe belongs to the House of Bourbon, which has its own coat of arms, 3 golden fleurs de lis on an azure shield. Those are dead center on the shield in the Spanish coat of arms. I'm just learning all of this today. I doubt most people here in my barrio know much about heraldry and the symbols behind the monarchy and the flag. Anyway, let's move on. Beyond the officially recognized symbols, we have, for example, women in flamenco dresses. One of my students back in the day told me a story in which she was a young exchange student up in Germany. When introducing herself as Spanish, she said she would get a lot of funny looks. "You don't look Spanish," was often the reply. "Where's your flamenco dress?" This was the long-gone decade of the 2000s, and international travel was less common in those days. So she had to explain all over Germany, she claimed, that Spain was a modern European country where people owned microwaves and listened to AC/DC, and where everyone dressed more or less normally. This was also before Zara was in every city in Europe. Spanish fashion is a bit more well-known these days. Anyway, nothing screams Spain like a woman in a flamenco dress, frilly on the bottom and possibly red with black polka dots. But let's be clear, it's not something Spanish women wear regularly. They might wear flamenco dresses for certain festivals, though, so it's not like you never see them. Flamenco music, I should mention, is more regional than you might think. You can see flamenco shows here in Barcelona, but they're organized for tourists. There's not much of a local culture for that sort of thing. If you want to see spontaneous flamenco in its natural environment, you're better off in Andalusia. And for flamenco dresses generally, go to a town fair in the south. Other regions have typical outfits which may be frilly, but which aren't quite the same as flamenco dresses. The Germans that my student was complaining about back in the day weren't just making all this up, though. The government has been promoting flamenco as a tourist attraction and symbol of Spanish identity for decades. There's also paella. Some people suggest paella as a symbol of Spain. I remember certain people being giddy when the folks in charge of these things finally delivered a paella emoji to our phones several years ago, a giddiness that soon blossomed into controversy when it turned out that the new paella emoji didn't have any of the traditional Valencian ingredients. As I've written before, people in Spain take paella very seriously. When Jamie Oliver several years ago put some chorizo in a paella recipe, it started a whole international incident, and we didn't hear the end of it for several days. Historically, of course, Spaniards were not experiencing the sort of abundance that we take for granted these days. Most of the time, paella was rice with whatever you had around, chorizo or chicken, or maybe even a neighborhood cat if times were hard. But purists these days want to draw a thick line between paella and arroz con cosas, and also want to strictly define each variation. In my highly controversial opinion, though, paella isn't even that good. I eat it about once a year when someone's visiting as a tourist and wants to try it. There are much better examples of Spanish cuisine out there. You can, of course, listen to my episode on my love affair with Spanish cuisine. That's episode 30. But I guess paella could be a symbol of Spain, as long as you're careful to get the ingredients right. Meanwhile, bullfighting has long been considered a symbol of Spain, but like many of these other symbols, it's now controversial. Many cultures throughout history have considered bovines to be sacred animals, and some historians consider bullfighting to be derived from the gladiatorial spectacles of Rome, or perhaps something even earlier. For me, bullfighting is the struggle of man versus nature, and I love a good display of bravery. It's not exactly a fair fight, but sometimes, after all, the bull wins. Many modern urbanites who have never killed and eaten an animal, or lifted a shovel out in the sun until their hands blistered, are happily unaware of man versus nature as a struggle, and they find the whole thing to be barbaric. And, to be fair, it is. It's bloody and disturbing. But the modern ability to sit in an air-conditioned office and feel offended by all forms of violence is a luxury that most members of our species just didn't have. Over the last couple of centuries, foreign writers such as Lord Byron, Ernest Hemingway, and James A. Michener have been fascinated by bullfighting and what it says about Spain and Spanish people. And up until fairly recently, it was a popular form of entertainment for all sorts of Spaniards, rich and poor, left and right. Like most of these symbols, though, bullfighting is having a bad couple of decades. It's actually been banned completely up here in Catalonia. On a sort of similar topic, we've got the Osborne Bull. The Osborne Bull is a corporate logo that developed a sort of life of its own next to Spanish highways. Grupo Osborne is a family-owned company making wine and brandy. I saw one of their big factories down in La Mancha on my first bike tour of southern Spain. That was earlier this year. I'm sure I have an episode about it. You can also check out the Route of Don Quixote on biketourinspain.com. Anyway, the factory down in La Mancha produces wine and brandy. The logo is just a black silhouette of a bull that you can see while driving around. There aren't nearly as many of them as there used to be, but you can still see some. The Spanish Parliament has even made a law protecting the remaining bulls, declaring that what was once a simple advertisement for brandy to be an important part of Spain's cultural heritage. My favorite movie about Spain, Jamón Jamón, makes a good use of the Osborne Bull as part of the director's general obsession with genitalia. Long story, but it's better to just watch the movie. Osborne's brandy isn't as popular as it once was, but as I mentioned earlier, the bull silhouette has become so symbolic of Spain over the years that it's even been put on an unofficial flag, which you sometimes see at protests, representing a sort of old-school Spanish conservatism. To wrap up, we have a few other symbols of Spain and Spanishness. For example, Joan Miró, the painter, made a famous logo for Spanish tourism back in the 1980s, which is still in use. It's a pretty weird logo, actually. You should Google it. Joan Miró logo probably will get you there. I gotta hand it to the people at the Ministry of Tourism for using it for so long. Some people suggest espadrilles as a symbol of Spain. These are simple shoes made of esparto grass and canvas or leather. People wear them in summer. They're locally called alpargatas. But what I don't know is if anyone outside of Spain sees them and immediately associates them with Spain. Then there are things like sunshine and olive oil, which could be considered symbols of Spain, although people might think of Italy for olive oil, and sunshine is available in many countries. All this brings me back to a point we were talking about quite a bit when I was younger, that Spain just isn't great at marketing itself. The Spanish brand is a bit confusing, at least in part because many modern Spaniards want nothing to do with traditional Spanishness and its stereotypes. Add that to the diversity of the country. The culture in Galicia is quite different than that of Andalusia, for example, and the fact that some regions want nothing to do with others, and you've got a country where it's difficult for everyone to get behind the same symbols. And I can relate. As an American abroad, you would not believe how many times people come at me by saying, "You know what the problem with American culture is? Hamburgers." I just roll my eyes. Yeah, bro, hamburgers. In my mind, I'm just a guy with a blog and a podcast, not some representative of Americana. I don't choose my national symbols, and I don't want to spend a lot of energy defending them. And although I've been here in Spain for 20 years, I'm also not a great representative of Spanishness, I suppose. I've even, on more than one occasion, made paella and put chorizo in it. That's about all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Did I miss any symbols of Spanishness? Please let me know. Head by the blog and write me a message, or go to expatmadrid.com/donate and send some money to the cause. I appreciate it. Every bit helps. Like I said, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Learn Spanish with Daniel. It also has all the episodes of this podcast, as well as some of my travel videos from around Spain. You can follow me on Instagram. Just look for my name, Daniel Welsh. You can also contact me there on Instagram. I would love to hear from you if you are listening 23 minutes into this episode of the podcast. What do you want to hear about? I am not an expert on all topics, but I can probably help out with at least some topics that people suggest. I've also got a lot of other things on the blog that are not necessarily episodes of the podcast, so you can check that out to expatmadrid.com. Next up should be my article and podcast about India. I was recently there with my wife, Morena, and I had a great time. I'll have the article and podcast done fairly soon. So please subscribe wherever it is you're listening. You can also give me a like or a 5-star review. I mean, you could give me any number of stars if you wanted to, but 5 is the recommendable number. That's on Spotify at least, and I think on Apple Podcasts you can also leave a review. Those things help to get the podcast a bit more visibility. You could share with all of your Spain-obsessed friends. Tell them about this guy Daniel over in Barcelona who makes the Spain to Go podcast. I'm coming up on 100 episodes here. That's a lot of episodes. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. I hope you're doing great, and until next time, hasta la próxima.